Hey, what's up YouTube? Valinov here today with my Sky Strike Spriggan Shaman. This is something I've been working on for a few weeks now and I'm really excited to share with everybody. I have really enjoyed the puzzle of putting together what the final product of this build ultimately is. I still have some tweaks I'd like to ultimately make to boost the damage a little further, maybe squeeze a little more survivability out as well. But I'm ready to present it now along with a easier to access or entry point for the build that is also quite fun to play. So the build utilizes the Harbinger of Stars belt with the cast on crit meteors to rain doom upon all of your enemies. We stay in Spriggan form so we get the nice benefit of a large boosted armor, lots of additional spell damage. We actually invest into the Shaman tree, which is pretty rare. Because the top part of the tree is very underwhelming. We get 32% spell damage for each of our totems. We have a total of 17 totems, so this makes our general spell damage boost huge. Of also using an ornate idol with boosted cold damage per totem gives us additional spell damage for our spells for our flat cold damage. As you can see in the clip running behind me right now, this is actually the variant I was talking about, this entry position or entry level build using the Havilar set to give us additional mana efficiency and raining avalanche boulders on our enemies in addition to the meteors. I find this build, it ultimately doesn't have the staying power, and you probably could get it to where you could clear tier 4s. But it would be quite a stretch. The damage ceiling is not quite as high as the main build I will be discussing later in the video, but I will post a rough planner for what the build is for this as well as my final recommendations for gearing for real in-game, where I can progress even further on my gear. But enough of all that, let's go ahead and get into the skills. Alright, going into our skills, I'm going to break down some major build interactions in the skills as we go over our individual skill choices and their trees. Starting out with Spriggan form, since it's in the title. The first point of interest is Spirit Whisper node. This gives us 3 Veil Spirits that produce additional Spirit Thorns cast for us. That gives us 7 projectiles minimum per cast once we're up to 3. As long as we don't leave form, those Veil Spirits don't go away. So we generally don't have to worry about losing out on our SSF projectiles since we stay in form the entire time. We take the Wrath of the Glades node. Since we have 9 healing totems, this is a 10% chance for each of those 9 totems to generate additional projectile, making our maximum number of projectiles 16 if we are ungodly lucky, but generally you're going to average 8 or 9 per cast, which is pretty nice. The real spice from the build is the Ire of Trees node. This is what led me to, putting this whole thing together. Makes our healing totems generate rage instead of healing us. Since healing totems have an inherent 5% healing effectiveness per point of attunement, we pretty easily get an additional 150% healing effectiveness. From the tree itself, we get another 120, and I have an idol, or you can spec in your passives for additional healing effectiveness. What this does is create each individual totem, if you have roughly 300% increase, to 20 rage per totem, leading us to have 180 rage per second generation, which far surpasses any other source of rage generation, other than some versions of Swarm Blade with 100% crit. Then you can, using Tornado and Storm Orbs, you can generate even more rage there. But I like this route. Obviously Crit Bear has pretty good options as well, do sustaining rage, but then you don't have as many hits per second as you can generate as having 3 casts of Spirit Thorns per second. But also in the tree, you want to make sure you get this Introspection node. This is important because this auto targets your Thorn Shield only to you, and you don't have to worry about targeting. Making sure the healing from Atera's Blessing is cast only on yourself. This allows you to generate 2 healing totems from Ancestral Renewal per cast, because the extra heal at the end counts as healing for this node. So you can generate 2 totems from 1 cast. Now granted, the first totem you generate will only last, there will only be 2 seconds of overlap if you plan on only doing 1 cast. I generally do 2 right away to get my extra totems. You cleanse your amulets from yourself and you get a nice boost to your spell leech. Looking at our Summon Thorn totem tree, we take 3 points of Memory Zoeterra, and then we boost our additional hit points and number of totems to the max to make sure that they do not die. I'll touch a little more on that as I get into the passives and the items. Summon Spring, pretty straightforward. We maximize our survivability here and the effects of our aura towards our damage. Ice Thorns is our last skill. We do take the on hit. It looks a little different than a normal on hit Ice Thorn setup. Since we have 17 totems, we take Shamanistic Fury, which gives us a 200 or over 200% more multiplier, pushing our total more multiplier almost to 300% on this skill. So we have 50% chance for it to cast on hit, and each one of those have a 40% chance to recast. Don't underestimate the damage that this actually deals. It deals about 75% of what our meteor crits are, which is huge. You know, even though the base spell scaling on the spell is pretty terrible, when we're fully buffed up, you know, our roughly 1100% spell damage, along with these more multipliers, the tooltip on Ice Thorns, it's pretty close to 100,000. So it's nothing to, you know, for tooltip DPS on a skill, that's actually pretty good, and considering its passive damage, it's even better. Just to go over it while we're here on the skills, if you were running the Havilar's version, you would substitute Ice Thorns for Avalanche and take the more multipliers in the tree here. You take Intensify 2 points and 3 points on Alpine Guide. Since we are a crit build, that adds a lot of value. If you're on a lower end PC, this may cause issues. Generally, I haven't really noticed any problems lately, but you never know. Then with your extra points, you'll take as much area as possible while converting fully to cold. The full conversion to cold is important because we are running a Spined Idol, ideally with the cold damage per active totem, since that scales so much additional damage. And we do have 10 flat cold granted from our passive tree. This would ideally be replaced with a Throne of Ambition. I don't have one yet, which would boost our flat cold and our fire damage multiplicatively, you know, for our damage for our spells, giving us roughly another 400% increase because of just how much spell damage we have. And it would boost our large amount of armor even further with a more multiplier for our armor. I don't have one yet. I do plan on getting one. You can go a two-handed staff setup if you had an extremely well-rolled crystal staff with, you know, let's call it exalted, spell crit, sealed, regular crit, and a tier 5 crit multi. You do miss out on some cast speed, and you probably won't manage to get as high crit chance. But, you know, you give up that for more flat damage and the ability to equip a Titan Heart for additional reduction. I really am liking the Wand and Catalyst option right now. Once I do have a good Crystal Staff, I probably will try that out again. And if I can manage to get a 2 LP Titan Heart. But as of right now, I'm really liking this. You want to get the Crystal Wand because of the flat mana. It's very important to get as much rage or mana as we can. We take Spell Crit and Crit Multiplier wherever we can. Ideally, you know, Crit Multiplier Exalteds would be better if I had a 6% base chance roll, and if I had Exalted Crit Multi instead of Spell Crit, I probably would be using that instead. But this is what I've got. You're going to want to take some resists if on your suffixes if you can. I, you know, wasn't able to land the resists I needed on the suffix here. For our helm and chest ancestral, unless of course you're using a two-hand. You're going to want attunement or flat mana on your prefixes, and ideally critical strike multi while transformed, or some form of spell damage increase on your chest. And suffixes are for sure going to be health. You'll notice on my gear, health is probably the most common FX because we're trying to boost our effective hit points. On my helm and my chest, I did have an amulet with health, but right now I'm using this one since it's rolled so well on everything other than that last affix. Big boost on cast speed, you know, brass amulet, probably your best bet for damage, spell crit. The most important stat you can get for boosting your damage on this build is armor shred. If I had gloves with better rolls and I had, instead of that flat health, if I had a exalted armor shred, I'd definitely be able to be using that instead. These are really nice. Get a nice little boost to endurance on your gloves. Best in slot, I think, would be the Judgment gloves, just because of the fire penetration, since we aren't able to get that much of that on this build, and the fact that it has a large amount of flat attunement that also would be boosting our healing effectiveness for our totems, more rage generation, more mana, more damage. Just would be better, but I do not have a LP2 or 3 pair of those. Because you definitely would want cast speed and hybrid health at a minimum on those gloves. Obviously, we have a Harbinger of Stars belt, which is the star of this build. Ideally, you're going to want that chance to cast meteor as high as possible. I don't have LP2 or LP3. Should be reasonable enough to find them. Again, hybrid health, increased health would be preferential here. For our relic, I don't have this on a good base, but I have a +4 Spriggan, cast speed, and another stat, like I mentioned, the armor shred being super important. Frailty on hit is also very, very important to have on one of your slots. It is available. You know, a +2 Spriggan form would be just fine. If you took a point here and a point here, it's not going to be the end of the world. So +2 is adequate here. There are some good options that you could upgrade to if you had LP 2 or 3 on your relic slot. Boots, you're going to want exalted movement speed. You are a slow boy with no movement speed playing a Spriggan. Please, please, please get exalted movement speed. And you're going to want hybrid health. You do need one crit avoidance roll somewhere on your gear. Rings, you are looking for increased critical strike chance and damage or attunement. This ring right here is about ideal as far as resists. It covers 3 of your resistances that you are in need of. This is just being used because it is a T7, T6 ring that I managed to land that is super nice. Got crit, endurance, some resists, and some damage. So, looking at our passives, I'll address the elephant in the room first. Our Beastmaster tree only has a lonely 8 points in it. There is a reason I don't have Aspect of the Boar. You maybe think I'm crazy, but the more I played the build, I noticed I didn't actually have Aspect of the Boar up that much. Since the build plays Spirit Thorns, they are homing at range. I don't have melee enemies hitting me that much. This is even more true against T4 bosses. It basically is never up, and that's where I was struggling. So I really, went back and how can I absolutely maximize my effective hit points? So I went and I boosted my flat armor wherever I could and my hit points. So looking at our base primalist tree, we take hit points here and here, and we take additional strength for the armor bonus, and we make sure we get 5 points in Berserker for that less damage taken at low health to increase our effective hit points against one-shots. In our Shaman tree, as a weird thing, we actually take 8 points in Silent Protector for the 200 flat armor, which scales with all of our armor increases. We increase our cast speed through Totemic Fury, maximize our additional hit points here. We take as much flat damage as we can for our spells. Protective Circle combined with the Shaman passive allows us to basically ignore physical and elemental resists on our gear. Since we have so many totems summoned at once, we're always overcapped on those. And Ascendant Circle, the real spice of the build, boosting our spell damage to astronomical levels with our totems up. As you can see, I've almost got 1100 spell damage with my setup, and my cold damage is even significantly higher than that, thanks to this idol. And lastly, looking at our Druid tree, we're taking 7 points in Shitness Plating again for stacking that armor, 5 points here to get the elemental penetration, boosting Druidic Prowess again for the additional mana and armor, and 3 points here and here for the movement speed and the leech on crit. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed the Sky Strike Spriggan build that I brought you today. hope that today is the day that I've earned your subscription. If you could hit that subscription button and give me a like on this video, it would be much appreciated. I'm going to leave you with some more gameplay of some higher tier boss kills. Thanks so much, guys.